Recording is starting.
Okay, friends and colleagues, audience here, thank you very much for joining us in our interactive webinar, the second of our interactive series. I'm Hana Khamis from Cairo, Egypt. I have with me Mr. Vance Stevens from Doha. Thank you for joining us today. And thank you for being there with us last week, supporting us in our session with Dr. Deborah Healy. Let me just tell you about who we are. I'm from NileTESOL Professional Development Chair and Learning Technology Special Interest Group Co-Chair, or actually no chairs here, it's co-coordinator. With my friend and colleague Ayat Al-Tawil. I hope she's with us. If not, she may be joining us in a few. Let me just tell you about what we are going to sort of talk about today. We have an interview with Vance on gamification. Is going to clarify all these, fine lines and all these new ideas related to the idea of gaming, gamification, game-based learning, and the rest of it. Today is the 15th of May, 2019. Vance has kindly offered to host these two sessions as part of Learning2gether.net. This is episode 411. Let me ask you before I hand the microphone to you, did I do well?
Everything but the date. This is the 15th of May. Oh, sorry. I'm losing my voice again.
Today?
It's the 15th of May. Oh.
15th.
Yes, 15th of May.
Yes, it is.
2019. Yeah.
2019. Okay. Yes. Thank you. Without further ado,
I always say that.
The microphone. Okay, you wouldn't. Okay, so without further ado is mine here, and the microphone is all yours to give us a brief introduction about the topic before we start asking questions.
Okay.
To you.
Thank you. I've got to modulate my voice. It seems like it's gone out again. A couple of hours ago, I couldn't talk at all. So let me put up the materials that I have. I'm going to start sharing my screen. And basically, this is what I'm doing. This is my webinar here. And that's my name. And this is the poster that Hannah made for us. And this is where I'm going to go right now. This is the Learning2gether. If you just tinyurl.com/learning2gether, takes you to, actually, I can go, let me just make that a little bit smaller here. Okay. So that takes us here, which is where I started articulating everything. I started getting myself to grips with these fine lines that that we have. It's probably even easier for me to follow here. But as you can see, if you go to that URL I just gave you, can you see it on the screen? tinyurl.com/learning2gether. Can you see that on the screen? Anna?
Yes, Vance.
Okay.
I'm communicating on the chat box just so we know.
I'm just getting feedback. Can you see the screen that says next upcoming events and then the URL? Okay, so that's the place that people should go to if you want to follow this presentation now, or if you want to come back to it later. And here, there's a link for the slides that Hannah started, and I filled in. These are these slides right here. So it makes a presentation, but basically you can see everything that I prepared myself for to do this session. It might be a little bit easier to go through it here because I took the slides from here. So basically, I'll just overview. The topic is gamification, but it's not really gamification. It's about game-based learning. And there's a super figure here named James Paul G, who's written a lot about game-based learning. Actually, he used to write about discourse analysis, and he invented the big D and the small d discourse. So there's discourse in a certain situation, and there's discourse in the wider community. So he's brought this concept over to games, and he says there's games with a small g and game with a big G. And what he means by that is that a small game is often played in a larger context with a lot of people around it. So, for example, World of Warcraft. I'm sure you've heard of that. It's does anybody here play World of Warcraft? Raise your hand if you do. It's a well-known game. Frankly, I don't play it myself, but it's an example of a game that has so many people playing it, a big community around it. There's the small G World of Warcraft game, and then there's the big G community around it. I'm not sure if World of Warcraft is very good for English learning. I'm not aware of. I think actually people have played many games for English learning. And the one that I use myself is Minecraft. Really, my credentials come from working with teachers in the game of Minecraft to learn how this big G game works. Anyway, as far as John Paul G is concerned and about his work on game-based learning, I've looked to see if he talks about gamification at all. He doesn't. Well, I mean, he might, but as far as I can see, I've searched on his publications. Gamification never comes up. I've searched on his texts of his publications. I just don't find the mention of gamification. So he's really writing about games and game-based learning. And he's well known for presenting 32 principles of good game-based learning in one book that he wrote. I think in a previous book he had listed 16 of them. And this website here, and of course you can go and find these websites yourself, they list, let's make that a little bit larger for us. There we go. These are actually worth looking at. What do people do in games? They develop a sense of identity. That's number one. Number two, there's interaction between the player and the game. Also, players in the game. And gamers help produce the story. They take risks. Games are customized to their competency level. Players have agency over a game. Games present well-ordered problems. The idea of the game is they give you a problem, you solve it, you go on to the next level, and you're constantly working yourself to get better and better. They challenge your assumed expertise. You think you're very good at something, you find out that you work a little bit each time. Also, they present information just in time. So they don't give you, if you look down to number 16, you perform before you are competent. And so in the traditional paradigm, people teach you something and then they expect you to perform. But in games, you learn just in time, number 9, and that makes you do things and then develop competence. So number 10, they're situated meanings within a game. That's where you learn language through Minecraft. They can become, they just should be pleasantly frustrating. That's what G calls it. That is, they're not that easy, but they don't frustrate you so much that you want to quit. You become a systematic thinker. You see how pieces fit together. You explore a game. You think laterally. You rethink your goals. They have smart tools embedded within the game and systems for sharing that information that you develop with those tools with others. And they're cross-functional. That is, players have different skills. So they have all these 21st century skills built in. G writes a lot about that, and remember, he calls it games-based learning. Now, people who write about gamification often talk about G. So I've just been reading a lot of things about gamification, and so many of them mention JPG, but they don't. But G, keep in mind, does not really talk about gamification. But the principles, these principles that we just went over, apply in gamification as well in all games-based learning. There's a funny little. By the way, this Dilbert cartoon is copyrighted. I didn't take it from Dilbert himself. I got it from a blog by Young Teacher. But it's a funny cartoon. Let's have a look at it. The boss says, we're replacing our outdated system of annual performance reviews. The new system is called gamification. Hot new trend. Employees can win badges, ribbons, awards for completing tasks. And Dilbert says, can we opt for the cash value of those awards? The boss says, they don't have any cash value. Dilbert says, oh, like garbage? The boss says, no, not like garbage, except in the narrow sense of having no functional, economic, or emotional value. Garbage is something you throw away. Dilbert says, oh, okay, hand me an award and watch what I do with it. Anyway, that's kind of almost an accurate view of gamification. So again,
Vance?
Yes.
Okay, here are two questions, okay? Allow me to ask one, and Walid needs to ask a question as well.
Excellent.
Okay.
Excellent.
I'm a person who loves to play games, whether it's like, you know, on the computer or off the computer. If I play things like, you know, Scrabble, cards, you know, Monopoly, and any other of these games, not the computer format, not the, you know, video game format or whatever, would that be part and parcel of what you're talking about, game-based learning or gamification?
Well, it depends on how you used it. I used Minecraft, sorry, not Minecraft, Monopoly. I used Monopoly in one of my classes. I put a game board on the floor, and I had the students sit around it, and I wanted them to talk about the game. In practice, I found that they said, pay me. And then they threw the dice and they moved their piece and they said, I buy, you know. So I actually didn't get a lot of discourse around that game of Monopoly. It was a little disappointing. But it still, that's something I tried to do myself, is to build something around the game. But there's not a lot of interaction among Monopoly players. Whereas Scrabble, let's say, there are tournaments in Scrabble, and there's a community of Scrabble players who travel to different Scrabble tournaments around the world. So there are these big G aspects of some of these.
Okay, yeah, I'm glad that you brought this up, because when I came across Scrabble, it said it's game-based learning, it's not gamification. But as a matter of fact, now Scrabble, I'm not working, you know, alone anymore. Scrabble, I'm not like, you know, playing with a computer. I can play up against other players around the world. It could be my Facebook, you know, friends, and like, I can earn points, you know, for like, you know, the like 50 points extra for full words. I can actually get, you know, sort of like, you know, I can share certain status, like, you know, I win badges, and I can share that on Facebook. I can even get percentages, you know, how much do I win versus other, you know, other players. So isn't that what is gamification all about? It's like, you know, these extras, or am I still doing just game-based learning?
What are you learning? What are you learning?
What I'm learning, maybe new words. Okay.
If that's your goal, to learn the new words, then you would be doing content structural gamification. So it's keeping you in the game. Maybe it's something you wouldn't. Well, I don't know. It depends. If you need incentive to do the game, then you wouldn't be playing it otherwise. Then gamification draws you into it. It probably does in a subtle way, because You say you're getting points and things like that. If you feel rewarded, then you're participating in gamification, if it's making you play the game. But gamification usually has a purpose. What we're talking about in education is something that has a purpose. So we're trying to learn something. You said learning words. I pointed out Memorize, for example. We were talking about that earlier. A game that students can play where it gets them learning words, and they play against each other. It gives them a lot of incentive. I've seen them use that incentive in class. Duolingo is another game that provides the same sort of incentive. So we can see some of the things that if I scroll down here, we can find some things. Let's see, go over to gamification. Differences between game-based learning and gamification. So gamification, let's go to, here's somebody's slide presentation. I'm not sure if I really agree with all this, but he says gamification uses game elements to engage. That's what's happening in your Scrabble game. And you have points, levels, badges, and achievements. That's number 2. And you're motivated by extrinsic rewards. So that's number 3. But number 2 on the other side is learning is achieved by playing the game. Well, that's a goal. That is something that you're doing in game-based learning. That is, you're doing in Scrabble because you're learning vocabulary. So, but are you using the game to meet a learning objective? Actually, a game, what's called, you had a name for it, a serious game. A serious game is one that is designed with a curriculum in mind. Scrabble is definitely not that. It's not designed with a curriculum. It's not really there to teach you words. It's there to, the purpose of the game is to get you to exercise words you already know. It will increase your vocabulary because you compete and you want to learn more words. So, but if it has something built into the game that's trying to teach you, then it's game-based. And gamification is something that provides incentives to people to play a game, usually for a purpose. It could be a commercial purpose. Okay, any questions from the audience? So, I can't hear you. I can't hear you. You're talking. What could the problem be? I heard something. Were you talking?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah. Walid's question is about Minecraft. He says, do we have to build the game for our students before playing?
No. Let me go to where I talk about Minecraft. Maybe I'll do that. No, maybe I have it here. Let's see. I'm not sure if I produced slides, and I also produced. Let's see where my table is showing these games. Yes, actually, the information is here. This is Minecraft is a game that this link right here takes you to 4 examples of things that I did in Minecraft with my students. So I'll just show them to you. So I set 4 challenges for them. The first challenge was for them to go into a tutorial world. I was using Minecraft Edu. There's a tutorial built in there. A tutorial is kind of like total physical response. Are you familiar with total physical response? What total physical response is when you tell your students sit down, they sit down. You say stand up, they stand up. It can be commands or it can be other things, but basically the students do an action in response to a prompt, and so they learn language that way. A tutorial in Minecraft is like total physical response. It says click here, cut down this tree, chop on this tree, pick up the logs, take the logs and make an axe with it. So it shows you how to do that. So there's a lot of language in there. And so I get my students to work in the tutorial world. That's the first thing. And then let me just make that a little bit bigger. Okay. The second one is the tutorial world takes them to a place where they have to cross. So they have to have learned enough things to get themselves across to the other side. The other side, there are things to do over there. So I asked them to go into that. You go over there and explore. The third thing is to build something in that world. There are a lot of things they can learn over here because there's so many things to do in Minecraft. There's so many tools. But basically, these are worlds that are already built for students. But the big challenge is the survival world, which is where there are two modes in Minecraft. One is creative, one is survival. And survival, basically, I was teaching military students. So pretend you're parachuted into this space that you can see on your screen here. And then you have to survive in this world. So you're there with other people. To survive in Minecraft, you have to prepare a shelter. You have to build some basic things, a crafting table so you can make tools, a furnace, which you get from cobblestone, which you can create light. And so once you get the basic things set up there, then you can pretty much survive. So, and from that point, you can go out and explore. And if you create a bed, if you get killed, you'll come back to the place that your bed is. And anyway, there are many dimensions to it, but that's a space that you don't have to build at all. What we generally do in Minecraft is we might build some things, or some teachers go there and build things, and then so the students will have an easier survival time if it's their first time. Or you can learn from your students. Your students might know or might learn more than you. That's the little g game. Minecraft is a little g game, and the big G game is all the participatory culture around Minecraft. So there are a lot of kids in the world who have developed their English fluently. I've met them, I've written about them. A mother of one interviewed her son, who became fluent in English playing Minecraft. He lives in Croatia, he speaks Croatian, but he had to deal in English with a lot of other kids. He started his YouTube channel. He explained what he was doing. He got a following, and he met other people, and they worked together. And their language he was 11 years old. He was 10 years old when he got into Minecraft, and 11 years old when I met him. But anyway, that kind of thing happens. That's the big G game. That's where people are learning their skills. They're learning something, but the game is not designed for them to learn that. That's why it's a content gamified game. So that's one of the distinctions I make in this presentation.
Okay. Someone else is asking you here. It's Shayma in the chat box. She's doing a PhD on gamification for EFL speaking and writing skills. She's a little confused about how to apply that to preparatory, I think here, secondary students, first secondary, which is like grade 9, I think.
Okay, so, sorry. When I stop talking, I lose my voice again. if I start talking, I get it back.
Sorry.
So where is that question?
Again, it's after Walid's question in the chat box. Samah.
Oh, yes, okay. Confused about the application part concerning first year secondary. EFL speaking and writing skills. You know, just to take a game like Minecraft, you can have students. I have had students write about what they've done in Minecraft. They build houses and describe them, or they do things. They build machines and describe what they do. So it doesn't have to be Minecraft, but there are a lot of things that you can do in games where you can describe what you're doing in the game. So if you, there are, gamification to me has always been something associated with G's idea, the big G and the little G games. And that is, I feel that gamification is something that you have to apply to your class. And that is, it has to be the course of study in your class. You can set up your class where they get badges for accomplishing certain class goals. It could be on a computer or something else. So if you build in rewards for students along in your class, you could gamify a class that way. So Hannah was asking me earlier if there was about an example of gamifying a class that I'm in the wrong, sorry, I'm looking in the wrong place here. I go to my slideshow, it might be a little easier. But there's a video you can watch about someone who gamified a STEM learning environment. It's on this slide here, slide 21. He was a STEM teacher in a secondary school. And so what he did to gamify his class, maybe I can even present that. Let me just, there we go. Let you see a little bit better here. So if you click on that link, if you get the slides and you click on the link, it'll work. And you can see where he talks about how he decided to gamify his class. He would remove all the furniture, everything off the walls. The students come into the class and he said, okay, what do you need to study here? We think you need chairs and desks, but I don't know, maybe you need something else. What can we design to make this class work? And they started there, and they started developing, they started creating, building things in the classroom. I'm not sure if he took that into a computer-based world, but telephone here, sorry about that. That's my wife's phone, because I have to use her hotspot. I had an internet problem here as well. Anyway, so that's remember there are games you can play that will have instruction built into them, and there are games that you can play that have things around the game which you can write about and speak about. So if that's what you're trying to do, you could engage students with games. Personally, I like Minecraft. That's something I've learned a lot about in the last 5 years. But there could be other things, other games. So if you find something your student, one thing you could find out what your students are playing, and see if you could bring some of that into the classroom. My military students were playing strategy games where they had armies and they're attacking one another. So to get them to talk about that would be something you could do. I just wonder if I can go back to there's another game having to do with calculus. This is a game-based learning example, but it's a game that just happens to, oops, sorry about that. I went a little too far. It's a game that, went way too far. Hang on a minute. Where am I? Oh, it's back here. This one. It's not a game. It's not gamified. It's it's a game-based game. So this game teaches people calculus. It puts them in an immersive world, and it has them learn. It has them solve puzzles, which they have to apply calculus to do that. It gives them tools. You can click on that link there. You can see a walkthrough of this game. But basically, they have these 4 different levels, which you can see on the screen there, and they have to pass through the 4 levels by using a tool set to solve calculus problems and make things happen that open up pathways to the next level. But that's not, it's game-based learning because it has the content built into it. But if you're doing reading and writing, you might actually want to get something that has a gamified element but doesn't have the content built in, so that the students can use the game to, you know, to have something to write about. My co-author in one of my books, let's see, we did this one where it says Kuhn and Stevens here. You can read this. I got it here. Yes. Yes, where it says pre-publication proof available. That's our chapter right there. You can get that, read it if you want. But Jeff Kuhn set up, I got involved with him over Minecraft. But what he did in Minecraft was he created zombie attacks in Minecraft, which created disasters. And he was having his students write about, the project was about disaster management. And so by creating situations where the students could get immersed in controlling a disaster situation where there were too many zombies around, he had them take some of the things they were doing there and then move over to their disaster management contexts in the class and write about them that way.
Okay. Here, people ask if there are any platforms, gamification platforms that are free of charge.
Well, I have found, let me see if I can find something. I was using something called Samaros. Yes, in fact, actually, I might have something I can, sorry, let me just stop my, no, I don't need to stop my screen share. I need to get out of this full, oh, here we go, exit down here. Okay. Let me see, where was I? I'm trying to remember where I was working. I was using games with my students. One of them is called Samarost. Another genre of game is Escape the Room. One nice thing about Escape the Room games and games in general is that they often have walkthroughs. So let me just see, let me do a Google search and see if I can find what I've done about Samarost. Okay, see if I can find, I can't remember which class I was teaching at the time. It was here, okay. Yes, this is it. Okay, this is a game called Samarost. Chapter 1 is free. So it has other chapters. You have to pay for those, but chapter 1 is free. So this game puts you into this world, and aliens come and they take your dog. They take your dog back to another planet. You have to follow them and find your dog and rescue your dog. Okay, so basically it has walkthroughs, so there's a reading aspect. So they play the game, and where they get stuck, they can read how to solve the problems, which is nice. And I have speaking components, writing, and grammar. So I'm having them exercise skills around based on the game. And it's an interesting game, kind of a mind-blowing game. I'm going to stop the share so I can see what's causing the sound problem here. It might be this one. Okay, I'm just going to, you're welcome to unmute yourself and ask a question orally. You can ask just like Hannah is doing. I don't mind if you unmute yourself.
Okay, I can help with that. Yeah, people are really sort of typing things. I think somebody is saying trace effects. is another platform. Trace Effects. Is that like something you've come across?
Yes. In fact, Deborah Healy was one of the, she worked on that project. Trace Effects, it's a game that, it's a game-based learning tool. It creates a really nice world. You have an avatar and you move around that world, but there are only limited things you can do in the game. Basically, you're trying to solve puzzles to so that Trace has fallen. He was playing around with a time machine at a different time, and he got himself sent back to this time, and he ended up here, and now he's trying to get back home to his proper time. To get help to do this, he has to help people. It's a game where he goes to a farmer's market and he helps people buy things at the farmer's market. And he goes to the Grand Canyon, and he goes to many different places, solves problems in each place. And in each place, you get to talk to people. So you click on people, you can talk to them, and they can give you clues to go to the next place. You move around and find clues, and of course you're using language all the time. And there's a lot of materials built up around that game. And it's free because it was developed by the U.S. government, and it's available in your U.S. Information Service or your State Department, the one that takes care of, that provides you English language materials. So you can get all these materials for free. It's a fun little game. So if it fits your curriculum, or if your students like to play it, it's something that can be exploited.
Yeah, we heard about that. I think, yeah, it's been used by the RELO office, the regional office,
yes,
for English language teaching, I think, a couple of years ago. And I think Nisreen, in chatting with us, Nisreen and Nisr is familiar with it. There is a question coming from Maha, and she asks, how could we use gamification in class while grasping the lesson? Okay, there is some plot maybe, and the instructor here should have a grasp over that, and they need not be overwhelmed with the game, so like at the expense of the lesson time and, you know, the pedagogical value, I guess. So
yeah.
Does that make sense?
Well, that's games. I mean, it depends on how much time you want to spend on creating your game. If you want to gamify your environment, you might have to develop your own goals and ways of awarding students for reaching those goals. That's one way to gamify a classroom, is to say, give them badges. Badges, a badge and a certificate are slightly different. A badge should be something that that is credible. A badge should link to what you had to do to accomplish it. A little bit different from a certificate. You should be able to see in a badge how you got that badge. So there's a difference in giving badges. And badges can also be stored in an open backpack. That is, you can take your badge from one context to another. So this is the idea of open badges and earning credentials in one place that maybe even employers could look at and see that you have skills that, because they can click on your badges and see how you got them and what you had to do to get them. A lot different from a certificate. So if you build an environment where your students can do this, and by the way, Moodle is one environment that awards badges and lets you set up a learning management system. A learning management system is where you can interact with your students. It's free, it's open source, but it does set up badges, and it interacts with Mozilla's backpack backpack.org, which is a repository for badges. So, but that's a lot of trouble to set up a Moodle and set up that kind of environment quickly. If you want to game what we've done, what I was doing when I was teaching, and the last place I was where we had to engage students all the time, people tended to use games like Kahoot or Memrise, Quizlet, things like that. Yeah. So, but those are games that don't go anywhere as far as, I mean, they do engage your students, but they don't really fit into a gamified environment.
Okay. As a matter of fact, I just been reading about that, and there was some research done on a group of, doctors, okay, like I think like first-year doctors or something of the sort, those joining ER, emergency rooms. And the idea of like, the disastrous situations you were talking about in a few, they were put under pressure of time all together in an escape room. They were divided into groups, and they experienced together, how, strategic kind of learning, how to get out of the room, team building, so they can work together and overcome the obstacles they've had, solve the problems and solve the puzzles, if you like, and just get out of that and reflect on their experience and how that relates to their experience as ER doctors. So is there any kind of relationship between this and that? How do you find this kind of experience?
Well, we were sorry, I did that with my voice again. I have to get it back. Okay, I got it. Almost have it. Okay, there we go. Okay, I think I got it. We were talking a minute ago about escape the room games. And this escape the room games. Oh goodness. Let's see if we can find the source of that sound. I don't see it, do you, Hannah? Oh, here it is. I think that's Mr. Shuda Halal's house. But I can't mute him. Oh, there we go. You did it. Well done. Okay. So I was talking about escape the room games. And that's one genre of where you can put people in stressful situations and you can have them collaborate to try to get out of it. And you can, since you're English teachers, not emergency room candidates, you can get people to respond to that kind of thing. In fact, those are really good ways to get people to write about, not only to write, but also to read, because as I said, you have to, you can find walkthroughs and you can read about them, you can follow instructions in English. So, but if you want to have something particularly geared toward emergency room people, that's going to, or actually, you might be able to find things like, for example, I was teaching pilots, so you could take flight simulators, and you could have people write about trips they make in flight simulators or situations they come up with. There are lots of simulations where you could find. Actually, you could find some free flight simulators, for example. I'm sure there are a lot of free things. You might even be able to find something. Well, I don't know what your students are interested in. If they're interested in emergency rooms, they could use those, but they might find other things that would put them in game-like situations, which they built this big G around it, and they communicate around what's going on in that game. So that's actually, I think, the key to what we're talking about here. You don't need to find the game that you take out of the shrink wrap and plug it into the computer, or basically you find something that people like to do and you have them do it and then write about it or talk about it or read about it. So get your language that way.
Sure. We have someone from Morocco. Hi, Mac. I'm Nasira, actually. Nasira. Hello, Nasira. She's asking about the theory of gamification as a basis for research. Is there any theory or is there any kind of research done on gamification?
Yeah, JPG is the JPG. Sorry, okay, I'm getting it back again. James Paul G is the guy who does a lot of this research. Let's see if I can find where I've got him in my slideshow here, because okay, let's see. Sorry, he's talking here in this slide about researchers who are actually, there are things you can read by him. Maybe I could just point you there. Let's just go to the end of this, point you to G's work. It's online. So, oh, this one by Salin, I think, oh yes, that's it. You can get that one right there. You click there, if you go to the slideshow, you can read his work about the ecology of games. That's a seminal work, by the way. It looks like the other one is not available, but you could go, he has a website. Let me just point you to that. View. Let's see. Hang on a minute. I'll find it in the slides. It was here at the top. Here we go. There's his website right there. This one, jamespaulg.com. So if we visit that, I'll show you what you can read here. Now, by the way, there's a publications part here. A lot of his publications are online, and some are and some aren't. But basically, if you click on some of these, here's some of his recent things. This journal paper. Let's see if it's online. Don't know if it is or not. In any event, a lot of his stuff is available, and he's writing about game-based learning. People who are writing about gamification refer to him. He's the he said in the slide I was pointing to earlier that you have to distinguish what makes a good game and what makes a bad game, because that would affect obviously your research. So what makes a good game? If you take a good game, he thinks that people are not necessarily talking about the game, but they're talking about the big G game, the part of the game that extends to. They're really researching the big G. They're researching what goes on around the game. I've got the wrong thing here. This is somebody talking about G, and so actually what that was in the. Here we go. This is it. So here's where he's talking about research.
We got like 7 more minutes.
Okay.
Let's take a couple more questions here.
There is
Maha is asking, Maha is asking here about, let me just make sure I got it. Yes, Maha? Yes, she's said something about Lost on the Moon and Lost on the Sea. Seems like some games that could be relevant. I haven't come across any of these, honestly. But she says that these could be used in CRM classes with pilots. CRM? Computer-mediated classes, I guess, with pilots. So do you think that teacher-designed games are better than computer-based games that are ready-made, off the shelf?
Well, sorry, I'll get my voice back. um, somebody at a TESOL conference, I can't remember which one it was in the last few years, um, turned his classroom, oh boy. So okay, now I got it. Okay, he turned his classroom into a game. He created a big game in the classroom, and he became quite famous for this. Uh, I was actually trying to think of where I could find it because he gave a plenary talk at the TESOL conference. And it was not a computer game, but it was a game where the whole class played. And he felt in his plenary talk that this had great benefits for the students who played the game. And the students uh, felt that they were learning about life in general. I suppose it's not what he did all day long. He probably did it for an hour a day. But he explained some of the dynamics of this game where the students would group together and compete against other groups. And they had power dynamics going on. Some people abused the power in the game and had to be attenuated by other players. And so this kind of dynamic that went on with a game that he just constructed in his class, where I don't know, it's kind of like Magister Ludi, the glass bead game. Are you familiar with that book? Trying to think of the author. I used to read everything by him. He wrote Siddhartha, Hermann Hesse. Anyway, it was about the glass bead game was about a game that everybody played in some future time, but they didn't really conceive computers at that time. He did write it at that time. But so sure, it's possible to create games that can be played off a computer, and people create themselves. But this takes a lot of inspiration. It's difficult to create a game. But if you could do it, then you could build it in your classroom, or you can make an app out of it.
Well, some people suggested that we could possibly create escape rooms. I mean, I haven't tried myself, but some people did. So if I can try this, maybe it's not a bad idea. I'm going to take the last few minutes here because, I mean, you've been talking a lot, and I'm sorry that you're not feeling that well today. Thank you for joining us. Oh dear, oh dear. So something that I should have really done at the very beginning is just introduce you properly to the community here, to our friends and colleagues joining us today. Vance Stevens actually is the founder of Learning2gether.net platform, actually combining or actually including people from different parts of the world. He makes podcasts. He invites and hosts virtual events. He has publications that emphasize how students use computer to learn languages, plus technology, by engaging in two most important things: communities of practice and participatory cultures. And that is something I would like Vance to clarify what we mean by participatory cultures, because it seems to be a very important element of gamification, or whichever type it is. His most recent Electronic Village online free session for the past 5 years has been on Minecraft, experimenting with it, and just as a good model for language learning, focused on learning language rather than just playing the game only. I guess if you like to end with a few questions here, final comments on the topic of gamification and participatory culture, that would be wonderful. So back to you.
I just Googled, okay, hang on, I just have to find my voice again. It's here somewhere. Okay, where is it? It's around in this area. There it is. Okay, I've got it. All right, so while we were just talking, I used to find escape the room games by Googling them. Unfortunately, there are now physical escape the room areas, so it's harder to find the online games. But you could find them. Maybe Think Fun, Escape the Room, Think Fun. Here we go. Anyway, you could find these games by Googling and try them out and find free ones. So I used to do this myself for my classes. About participatory cultures, they are basically the big G in the game. Participatory cultures are when people come together around an online community, a community of practice, and form their own culture around it. So to take World of Warcraft or Minecraft, they both have YouTube sites you could go to. They have lots of communities where you could join. You find many people to interact with. The nice thing about them from a language point of view is that they're a good place for people to learn language or to use language authentically with other people. So participatory culture is what you enter into when you go online, spend a lot of time in one place, maybe with your Scrabble people. If you're playing online, Scrabble online, that would be participatory culture, where you have you know the people. You can chat, you can text them, you can chat them, you can learn about each other. So even Webheads is a participatory culture in a way. So where people learn more about each other than just the subject matter and develop their subject.
Of course. I don't want to overwhelm you with more questions here. I think 1 hour of talk is more than enough, really. I appreciate everything you've done for us here, despite you know, the effort and you know how much it is hard to talk when you're not feeling that well. There are more questions, by the way, lots of questions. I'm going to send you the chat log, okay, and I will ask. Yeah, I would ask you to just type in the chat box your email for further communication.
Okay.
I believe very interesting questions related to assessment and gamification. Is there any possibility to assess at the same time play the game? You know, how much learning has been done. So if you type in, yeah, it's there. So I would ask our professional writing fellow colleagues in NileTESOL to communicate with Vance to ask for the question. I think Shayme or Samah, I think. Samah has further questions to ask about research and so on. So I would like to thank Vance again for backing us up once again, for being there for every single one of us today, addressing that very interesting topic. And from the interaction, I believe here, you've noticed how much people are keen about it. Final word is, I'd like to end this session by saying, this is Hene Khamis, NileTESOL Professional Development and Learning Technology Special Interest Group. Today is May 15th, 2019, episode 411 from Learning2gether.
That's right. Yes.
I did it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. You can end the recording if you like.
Okay, I'm just grabbing the chat myself. So
yeah,
you
save the chat.
Yeah, so I'm copying it. Oh, I could have selected all. I didn't realize that.
I can send it. I can send it to
you. Hopefully we have 2 copies now. Okay, well, thank you very much, and I'm really sorry about my voice. It would have been impossible to do this an hour or a couple of hours ago. I had no voice, but it came back, a miracle. Okay, well, thank you very much, and Ramadan Kareem to all of you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye-bye.